I'm Cassandra, 30. Financially stable, homeowner, business owner. And still, somehow, the family footnote. They call me responsible, which is code for forgettable. They say I'm independent, but what they really mean is alone. My mother once told a neighbor I was so career-minded she might never marry, like that was some tragic personality defect, not that anyone ever asked how I felt about it. So when I pulled into the gravel driveway of the Winslow estate that morning, flanked by white rose arches, valets in black bow ties, and more pastel-dressed guests than a fashion catalog, I already braced myself. I wasn't here to be seen. I was here because Rachel, my best friend since sophomore year of college, was marrying the love of her life, and I had promised her this day would be perfect. I helped plan it all, booked the vendors, designed the seating chart, mediated the war between her mother and her mother-in-law. I even stitched the hem on her gown when it tore during rehearsal. But I knew, deep down, by the end of the night, someone would ask if I was Rachel's assistant. Again, the estate was sprawling, and the ceremony area shimmered under a sky that couldn't decide between sun and storm. I stepped out of my car in a navy sheath dress, classic and clean. No one greeted me. Not that I expected fanfare. My parents were already mingling by the fountain, my mother's laugh cutting across the courtyard like a blade dipped in champagne. "There she is," my father said when he spotted me. I smiled, a practiced reflex. "You made it," my mother added, as though I hadn't been texting her updates from the airport, the hotel, the florist. "Did you come alone?" I nodded. "Still so picky," she sighed, adjusting her pearl necklace. "One day, maybe. If you don't wait too long." It was always the same script. Every wedding, every holiday, every casual brunch. "You know," she added with a tight smile, "there's still time to meet someone here. I think the groom's brother is single. He's in real estate." I didn't answer. Just tucked my invitation into my clutch and scanned the crowd. I caught a few of the cousins whispering near the champagne tower. One of them glanced my way and said, not softly enough, "She's the one who bought her own ring, right? For when she eventually finds someone." If. I looked away. Not because it hurt, though it did, but because if I let it show, they'd win. My life didn't fit in their script, so they laughed like I was the punchline. They didn't know what the ring actually meant to me. I bought it 5 years ago. A modest diamond set in a platinum band. I wasn't dating anyone. I wasn't celebrating a promotion. I just wanted something for myself. Something beautiful. Something I didn't need to justify. I told myself I'd wear it when I hit a milestone, my own milestone, not one someone else handed me. Maybe I'd propose to myself. Maybe I'd save it for someone who actually saw me. Until then, it stayed locked in the velvet box at the back of my dresser drawer, quietly reminding me that I had a future. Even if my family couldn't imagine one for me. Rachel texted me from the bridal suite just then. "You here? Can't breathe without you." I smiled, replying, "Already on site. Breathe, it's your day." I headed inside, heels clicking over marble, past relatives who barely acknowledged me. I didn't care. Rachel mattered. This moment mattered. And if the past taught me anything, it was how to stand quietly in the background while others took the spotlight. But this time, something felt different. Like a low hum beneath the music, a tension I couldn't quite place. And it all started with a whisper from my mother as I passed her near the gift table. "Just wait until the reception," she said, eyes gleaming. "We have a surprise gift for the bride." She winked. And suddenly, I couldn't breathe. Because I knew that look. I knew that tone. And I knew, without a shadow of a doubt, that she was planning something. Something involving me. The bridal suite smelled like roses and hairspray, and that heady kind of joy that only comes once in a lifetime. Rachel stood in the center of it all, barefoot, her embroidered robe slipping off one shoulder, cheeks flushed from champagne and nerves. The sight of her made my throat tighten. "Finally," she said, spinning toward me with arms outstretched. "My sanity has arrived." I caught her in a hug, careful not to smudge her makeup. "You look like a painting," I said into her shoulder. "You say that every time," she laughed, pulling back. "But this time, I believe you." Her mother, Sandra, was fluttering around the room like a well-dressed hummingbird, barking instructions at a flustered bridesmaid about the floral arch. She barely glanced at me. I helped Rachel into her chair in front of the vanity, gently picking up a strand of her dark hair. "Loose curls or pinned?" I asked. "Loose, soft, dreamy. You know the look." I did. I'd helped her practice it a dozen times during our planning nights, when she'd wear the ring and veil while we FaceTimed with her planner and tried not to cry from laughter. It hit me then. This wasn't just Rachel's day. It was the culmination of hours and hours of love poured into making her dream perfect, which is why I couldn't shake that sick, slow-spreading dread from my mother's voice earlier. We have a surprise gift for the bride. Not Rachel's surprise. Not mine. Theirs. My hands faltered in her hair for just a second. "Hey," she said, watching me in the mirror. "You okay?" "Yeah, just thinking." "About what?" "Your mom's threat level. She's in full hurricane mode." Rachel smirked. "That's not new." "No. But something's off today." Her smile faded. "What do you mean?" I debated telling her. About the whisper, the wink, the way my stomach dropped. But this wasn't the moment. She deserved peace, not paranoia. "Probably nothing," I lied. "Just family being family." She studied me like she wanted to press but let it go. That was one of the things I loved most about Rachel. She never pushed, but always saw through me anyway. "I don't know how I'd have done this without you," she said, voice quieter now. "You would have done it," I replied, pinning a curl behind her ear. "You just would have cried more." She laughed, her eyes glassy. Behind us, Sandra was giving instructions about the guestbook table. The makeup artist swiped at her brushes like they were weapons. The planner peeked in to confirm the violinist's arrival. Everything was moving, fast and chaotic and alive. But beneath the noise, I could still hear my mother's voice. That smug promise. "We have a surprise gift for the bride." My ring was at the hotel. In the safe. Still locked up, just like it had been for 5 years. And suddenly, the fact that I hadn't worn it in months made me feel exposed, vulnerable. I excused myself to the bathroom and splashed water on my face, staring at my reflection. The woman in the mirror didn't look rattled. She looked composed. Neutral. Just like always. But inside? My bones were vibrating with warning. Something was coming, and I had no idea how bad it would be. The champagne was cold and crisp, and I hated every sip. I stood near the edge of the courtyard where cocktail hour had taken over, a thin flute of bubbly in my hand and a practiced smile fixed to my face. Waitstaff floated between clusters of guests, offering tiny hors d'oeuvres I couldn't pronounce, let alone eat. Everyone looked beautiful. Glowing. Giddy. I must have looked like them too, at least enough not to draw attention. That was my specialty after all. Polished, pleasant, politely forgettable. I was fine with that. Most days. But not today. "Did you hear she's still single?" a voice said behind me, low and amused. "She's 30 now. I mean, at some point it's not independence, it's just denial." I didn't turn around. I didn't have to. The voices belonged to my mother's cousin Belinda and her daughter Sophie, both clad in soft pink and pearl. They hadn't seen me step outside a minute earlier. Or maybe they had. It probably wouldn't have changed a thing. "She focuses too much on work," Sophie added with a knowing scoff. "And wasn't she the one who bought her own engagement ring?" Laughter. "Oh, bless her heart," Belinda said. "That's not a plan. That's a fantasy." I took another slow sip, kept my back straight. My heart thudded, but I didn't let it show. They didn't know the story behind the ring. They didn't know I hadn't bought it out of desperation, but out of hope. Out of pride. Out of a desire to hold something that meant my future was mine. To them, it was pathetic. To me, it was sacred. I waited until their voices faded toward the fountain before exhaling. I should have been used to it by now. The comments. The pity disguised as concern. The dismissive way they talked about me like I wasn't flesh and blood standing 10 feet away. But something about today made it feel heavier, more personal. Like they weren't just trying to wound me, they were setting the stage for something bigger. And I still didn't know what it was. I moved back inside toward the reception hall, heart still tight, nerves still raw. The room had transformed while we'd been outside. Tables glowed with candlelight and gold accents. Soft music played from the speakers. The cake stood tall and pristine by the far wall, decorated in lace-like sugar petals. Everything looked perfect. Except, I knew something wasn't. From across the room, I caught my mother watching me. She was smiling. Not a warm smile. Not even a fake smile. It was expectant, like she was waiting for something to unfold. And then she turned to whisper to my father, both of them glancing my way. His brows lifted, then furrowed. Her mouth kept moving. He nodded once, and just like that I knew the whisper earlier wasn't idle. It was a setup. And I was the target. They always said I was too practical for sentiment, but they never saw me the day I bought that ring. It was a Tuesday afternoon, spring. I was 25, freshly promoted, and had just signed the lease on my first solo apartment. My mother called it an expensive shoebox. I called it freedom. I passed the jewelry store on the way home from work, something about the way the sunlight hit the window pulling me in. The clerk was polite but surprised when I asked to see their engagement rings. For someone else? He asked, a little too brightly. No, I said, for me. He blinked, but he didn't ask questions. Just brought out the tray like I was any other woman shopping for something special. And I was. It wasn't about pretending I was engaged, it wasn't about loneliness, it was a promise to myself. A symbol that my life didn't need to follow their script to be beautiful. It was small, just over half a carat, set in platinum with a halo of tiny diamonds around the center stone. Delicate but strong, like I wanted to be. I paid in cash, left with a velvet box tucked into my coat pocket and a feeling I hadn't expected: peace. That night, I toasted myself with takeout and red wine, standing barefoot in my empty apartment. I didn't even open the box, just held it. Let it be what it was, a declaration that I mattered, with or without anyone else. I never told anyone in my family about the ring. I didn't need their opinion. And if they ever found out, well, I imagined it would go something like what I heard today. Fantasy. Delusion. Sad. But they didn't understand what it meant to claim something for yourself when no one else ever did. I wore it a few times, on my right hand mostly. At networking events. At my cousin's wedding when I didn't want to fend off pitying glances. Once when I got a huge client contract, just to celebrate. But for the last year, it had stayed locked away. Not forgotten. Just waiting. And now? After the looks, the whispers, the way my mother had said a surprise gift, I felt something shifting. This wasn't about family tradition. This wasn't about Rachel. This was about power. Control. Taking something that wasn't theirs and dressing it up as generosity. I glanced toward the head table where Rachel was posing for pictures, radiant and laughing. She had no idea. None of them did. But I did. They were planning to make that ring, my ring, a spectacle. And I'd be expected to smile and pretend it was never mine to begin with. The gift table was crowded with ivory envelopes and glittering bows, but it was the conversation behind it that stopped me cold. I'd gone over to drop off the small monogrammed box Rachel asked me to hold earlier. A sentimental bracelet from her college days, something she wanted kept safe. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop. I was just standing there. But sometimes silence opens more doors than curiosity ever could. She's going to be shocked, my mother said, voice hushed and gleeful. She'll cry, replied my father, though he sounded less certain. You really think she'll go along with it? She won't dare object, my mother said with a sniff. It's the perfect gesture. Our daughter gifting her best friend the heirloom ring? It's a moment. People will talk about it for years. Vivian. My father hesitated. You're sure she's not going to cause a scene? She knows how to behave, she snapped. Besides, it's not like she's using it. And Rachel deserves something meaningful. That ring shouldn't just sit in a drawer waiting for a man who doesn't exist. The blood in my ears roared louder than the string quartet playing in the next room. Heirloom ring. There was no heirloom ring. They were talking about mine. The diamond I bought. The one I saved for. Insured. Protected. The one I never let out of my sight for more than a weekend unless it was locked in my safe. And now, they planned to pass it off as some family relic and hand it to Rachel like a party favor. A photo op. A gift from me. Like it didn't belong to me at all. I stepped back before I could be seen, heart pounding so hard I thought it might crack my ribs. My heels clicked too loud on the polished floor as I ducked behind a floral display, gripping the edge of the table until my knuckles ached. Breathe. I told myself not to panic. Not yet. Let them have their plan. Let them think I'm unaware. Because I needed to be sure. I needed to hear the words come from them, not just through hints and half-heard conversations. This wasn't a mistake. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was theft. Premeditated and wrapped in satin. I watched as my mother glided back into the crowd, her smile polished and false as ever. My father trailed behind, his shoulders heavy, eyes flicking once toward me and quickly away. He saw me, and he didn't say a word. That was all the confirmation I needed. They were going to try it. Tonight. And when they did, the whole room would watch. So I made a decision right then. Let them. Let everyone see exactly who they are. And more importantly, let them see who I am. The reception lights dimmed just enough to make everything shimmer. Glasses clinked, forks scraped plates, and the band had just switched from jazz standards to something slow and syrupy. Rachel looked like a dream, cheeks still pink from dancing, her new husband's arm around her waist as they swayed near the sweetheart table. And then my father stood. There was a gentle tap of silver against his glass. The room stilled. I knew. I knew before he said a word. "Ladies and gentlemen," my father began, voice smooth, rehearsed, full of false pride, "if I could have your attention for just a moment." I felt it in my chest, the tightening, that quiet little drumbeat of panic. "This has already been a day of joy, of beauty, of family," he continued, eyes sweeping the room. "But there's one more moment of love we'd like to share. A surprise." I set my wine glass down. My hand was steady. My heart wasn't. He glanced toward my mother, who gave him a small nod like she was cueing an actor on stage. "And it comes from our daughter," he said, turning toward me. "As a gesture of deep friendship and sisterhood, she's chosen to gift Rachel something incredibly meaningful, our family's heirloom ring." Gasps fluttered through the room like moths hitting a chandelier. Rachel turned sharply in her seat, mouth forming a soft O of surprise. I didn't move. My father's smile widened, a symbol of love passed down through generations. And now, to be worn by someone who's become like family to us all. All eyes were on me. The applause started in scattered bursts, relatives clapping, smiling, some of them even rising to their feet as cameras flashed and phones raised. Rachel was beaming. Her hands covered her mouth. "Oh my God, are you serious?" she whispered, looking at me. I couldn't speak. Because that moment, the one I'd feared, the one they'd planned so meticulously, was here. They were doing it. They were handing my ring to someone else. They were rewriting the truth. Live, under chandeliers and crystal and white lilies, with champagne still bubbling in guests' flutes. And they expected me to play along, smile, nod, reach into my bag, pull out my ring, and act like I hadn't just been stripped bare in front of 200 people. My mother caught my eye from across the room. She didn't look nervous. She looked smug. And that was when something inside me stopped being afraid. Because now everyone was watching. And they were about to see exactly who I was. The clapping surged like a wave, sweeping through the room with blinding speed. Rachel stood now, wiping under her eyes with trembling fingers, caught somewhere between disbelief and gratitude. "Oh my God," she said again, stumbling toward me, hands outstretched like she couldn't wait another second. "I can't believe you're doing this. This is everything." She threw her arms around me before I could say a word. People were filming. Guests craned their necks, smiles everywhere, tears. One of the groomsmen actually whistled. "You're amazing," Rachel whispered into my ear. "You didn't have to. I never expected. God, this is why I love you." I didn't move. Her grip tightened around my arms as she pulled back, eyes shining. "I mean, your mom told me about the ring months ago," she said, laughing through tears. "But I thought it was just a maybe. I didn't think you'd actually—" "Wow." I blinked. "What? Months ago?" The world was spinning now, but I couldn't afford to fall. I turned slightly, scanning for my mother. She was near the stage, clapping along with the crowd like she'd just orchestrated a royal engagement. And maybe she had. Because apparently this wasn't spontaneous. This had been planned. For months. Behind my back. "I don't know what to say," Rachel went on. "I mean, this ring is part of your family, right? It's been passed down for generations?" I opened my mouth. Nothing came out. Because how could I even begin to explain? That it wasn't an heirloom, that it was mine. Bought with my money, chosen with care, tucked away as a silent promise I made to myself when no one else believed in my future. But they'd turned it into theater. My mother stepped forward now, joining us. "It's okay, sweetheart," she said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "We brought the ring. You left it at the hotel, remember? Your father picked it up this morning. Go ahead, give it to Rachel." She reached into her clutch and pulled out a small velvet box. My box. Everything inside me froze. The crowd leaned forward. Rachel gasped again. "Oh my God, really? You even brought it here?" I didn't move. Because this wasn't a moment of love. This was a robbery, wrapped in tulle and applause. And I wasn't about to hand them the weapon they were trying to use against me. Not without a fight. I could hear my heartbeat in my teeth. The box was in my mother's hand now. My box, unmistakably navy with the worn corner from years of being tucked away. She held it delicately, like it was a gift she had purchased, like she owned it. Rachel's eyes were wide and sparkling, her hand half outstretched. You don't have to make a big speech, she said, laughing nervously. Just open it, yeah? I'm dying to see it. I looked down at the box, then up at my mother. Her smile said, do it. Her eyes said, don't make this ugly. I could feel the weight of every single guest's gaze settling on me like wet velvet. Heavy, suffocating, hungry. My father gave me a small nod from the edge of the stage, trying to look proud, like this was all part of some noble plan. But it wasn't pride behind his eyes. It was pressure. Rachel took a step closer. I never imagined I'd wear something so special, she whispered. I'll take such good care of it, I promise. I met her gaze. She meant every word. She had no idea. And that was when I realized. None of this was her fault. She wasn't the thief. She was just the stage. It was my mother who'd choreographed this, my father who'd delivered the lines, my relatives who'd whispered from the wings. I was the prop. Until I wasn't. I took one quiet breath and said, clearly and calmly, that ring is mine. The room fell silent. Rachel blinked. What? It's not a family heirloom, I said, louder now, my voice slicing through the stillness. I bought it 5 years ago, with my own money. It's mine. No one moved. The box hovered mid-air in my mother's hand like it might shatter. I turned to her. You knew that. And you brought it here anyway. Her mouth opened, closed. I didn't agree to this, I added, voice flat. You never even asked me. Rachel looked between us, her smile crumbling. Wait, I don't understand. Your mom said. Your mom said? I know what she said, I interrupted gently. But it wasn't hers to give. The silence was alive now, pulsing with disbelief. Somewhere, a phone stopped recording. Another started. And still, I didn't back down. I just looked at the woman who had raised me, now staring back at me like she didn't recognize who I'd become. I wasn't the background anymore. I was the storm. My mother didn't miss a beat. She reached for the microphone like she'd been waiting for this exact disaster and already had the script memorized. Everyone, she said, voice brittle with forced cheer. I'm so sorry for the confusion. Guests stopped mid-sip. Conversations died. Even the band faltered. My mother smiled tightly, the kind of smile you wear when your world is unraveling, but you refuse to let anyone see the threads. There's been a misunderstanding, she went on, sweeping her gaze across the room. Our daughter, bless her, is going through one of her moods. Gasp. A few scattered laughs, nervous ones. My spine stiffened. She's always been a little sensitive, she continued, and private. We meant this gesture as a beautiful surprise for Rachel, a way to include her. She's like family. Vivian, I said quietly, warning her. But she wasn't finished. And if she's changing her mind now, well, she said with a soft shrug, that's her choice. We just hoped she'd think of someone besides herself for once. There it was, the slap, delivered not with a hand but with a microphone. A hush fell so thick it muffled the clinking of glassware. My jaw tightened, fingers curling into fists at my side. Rachel stared at me, stunned. I'm sorry, my mother added, turning to her. She's always struggled with sharing. That was when I saw it. The flicker of something in Rachel's eyes. Doubt. Not about the ring. About the story. Because it didn't line up. Not with who she knew me to be. Not with the months of late-night calls, emergency fittings, timeline spreadsheets, all the ways I'd quietly held her wedding together. My mother saw it too, and for the first time, something in her confidence cracked. But she kept going. We're not trying to cause a scene, she said sweetly, twisting the knife. We just wanted to honor tradition, and since she won't be using the ring, I am using it, I said, loud enough to stop her. And this time, I stepped forward. Not retreating, not hiding. The mic slipped in her grip for just a second. I looked her dead in the eyes. It's not about tradition, it's about control. And I'm done playing along. Gasps again. This time, sharper. And in that split second, I could feel the balance shift. Something in the room changed. They were still watching. But now, they were listening. Rachel stepped forward, her veil fluttering with each shaky breath. Wait, she said, holding up her hands like she was trying to part water. I need to understand. Your mom told me. She said it was an heirloom. From your grandmother? It's not, I said, my voice flat but unwavering. There is no heirloom. I bought that ring. Years ago. It was never hers to give. Rachel blinked fast, as if trying to rewind time. But Why would she lie? She asked, more to herself than to me. I didn't answer. Because the answer would shatter more than just a fantasy. Behind her, guests murmured. Some fidgeted with their napkins, others watched like it was the most gripping drama they'd ever witnessed. Phones were still up. The glow of their screens painted everything in blue light. I knew this would be online by midnight, captioned in real time. Bride betrayed by surprise ring twist. Or worse. Rachel glanced back at my mother, who now stood frozen, her mask slipping just enough to reveal the tension in her jaw, the twitch of her left eye. Her perfectly constructed world was unraveling one exposed truth at a time. And I was the one pulling the threads. This was supposed to be a celebration, Rachel said, turning back to me. Her voice was softer now. I thought this would mean something. It does, I told her. That's why I can't pretend it's something it's not. She looked at the box still clutched in my mother's hand, then down at mine, empty and still. A long beat passed. I didn't ask for the ring, she said finally. I swear, I didn't know. I believe you, I said. And I did. This wasn't her deception, it was just happening on her. My mother stepped forward again, her voice syrup sweet but cracking. Darling, we don't need to drag this out, she's just having a moment. This day is about love, not drama. A few relatives nodded hesitantly, trying to keep the peace. But others looked away, uncomfortable. Even the band hadn't resumed. The silence was louder than anything now. Rachel turned to my mother. Why did you lie to me? That landed like a dropped champagne flute. My mother paled. I didn't lie. I just assumed she'd be ready to let go of it. It's been sitting there, collecting dust. Because I was saving it, I said, sharp now. Not for someone else. For me. I stepped closer, finally reaching for the box in her hand. She didn't move. But I didn't wait, I took it. My fingers curled around the velvet, and just like that, I felt whole again. They could have their lies, their performance, their perfect optics, but the ring was mine. And I wasn't giving it away. The moment the box touched my hand, everything changed. It was subtle. Like the air shifted, charged with static. But I felt it. The room pulsed. The guests leaned in, bracing for whatever came next. She's being selfish, someone muttered near the back. She's got no one to give it to anyway, came another voice, louder. Then, as if on cue, the whispers became words. It's tradition. It's for family. She doesn't need it. She'll never use it. Like a chorus warming up, their voices rose around me, each one more invasive than the last. They weren't speaking to me. They were speaking about me, as if I wasn't there. As if I were an obstacle to be negotiated around, not a human being standing at the center of the wreckage they created. Rachel stepped back, visibly rattled. Her smile had vanished, replaced by a stunned kind of stillness, like she was realizing she'd been dropped into someone else's war. And then my mother did what she always did when control slipped through her fingers. She turned cruel. Why are you making this ugly? She said, stepping forward again. All we wanted was to honor you, to make you part of something meaningful. But, of course, you'd turn it into a spectacle. The guests gasped again. One woman near the front actually dropped her napkin. You're embarrassing yourself, my mother hissed, low but furious. Grow up. My jaw clenched. I could feel the heat behind my eyes, but I refused to let it fall. Not here. Not for her. You tried to give away something that wasn't yours, I said, loud enough for the room to hear. And when I didn't smile and let you take it, you called it selfish. You have no one, she snapped, venom slipping through her teeth now. No fiancé. No children. You think this ring means anything locked in a drawer? This was your chance to be part of something real. And there it was. The final weapon. Not a slap. A gut punch. Delivered with a smile. Gasps erupted. Someone said, "Oh my God." Rachel's hand flew to her mouth. My father stepped forward, finally. Too little, too late, his voice quiet. "Vivian, that's enough." "No," she said, shaking him off. "Let's say it out loud. She's alone. That ring will never be used. She doesn't even believe in marriage, not really. She just likes holding on to things out of spite." My breath caught. My body stayed still. But inside, everything split open. The truth wasn't in her words. It was in the desperation with which she said them. She wasn't trying to protect a tradition. She was trying to protect an illusion. And I had just shattered it in front of an entire room of witnesses. It was the silence afterward that did it. No one clapped. No one laughed. The crowd stood still, blinking under the soft chandelier light, holding glasses mid-air and breaths mid-chest, waiting to see what the difficult daughter would do next. I looked at my mother. My beautiful, immaculately dressed mother. Her mouth slightly open, chest rising and falling too fast, a storm barely held behind her lashes. "You're right," I said softly, the words slicing clean through the air. "I don't have a fiancé. I don't have a husband. I don't have a child you can dangle my worth on." Her smug expression flickered. "But you know what I do have?" I lifted the box slowly, opening it with steady hands so the diamond caught the light. "I have this. Because I believed, just once, that I didn't need anyone's permission to want more. That I could mark my own milestones. That I could buy something beautiful just because I earned it, loved it, wanted it." Rachel's eyes filled with tears. My voice didn't shake. It was the calm after a hurricane. "And instead of being proud of me, you saw it as something to steal." A sharp breath drew from the back of the room. "You wanted a moment, a photo, a headline. Your daughter, the selfless spinster, handing over her last shred of hope like a party favor. But this ring?" I lifted it between two fingers. "This wasn't about marriage. It was about me. It still is." The room was silent, except for someone near the side who whispered, "Good for her." My mother took a step forward. "You're humiliating yourself." "No," I said, closing the box. "I'm ending a tradition." She blinked. "What tradition?" I smiled. "Letting you rewrite my story for your convenience." The applause started slow. One table, then another. Scattered clapping that grew louder with each second. Not everyone joined. Some folded their arms. Others averted their gaze. But the sound was enough to split the room, to break the illusion that what just happened could be tucked away and forgotten. My mother looked around, stunned by the betrayal of the audience. And for once, she had no words. Rachel stepped beside me, slipped her hand into mine. Her grip was warm, solid. "I'm so sorry," she whispered. I shook my head. "Don't be. Because this wasn't about her. It never had been. This was about a ring, and everything it was never meant to represent, until now." I stood center stage without a spotlight, yet all eyes burned on me like heat lamps, waiting. Some in judgment, some in awe, some just caught in the spectacle. The box sat closed in my palm. My mother had retreated to the corner, red-faced and rattled. My father looked like he wanted to disappear through the floor. Rachel still held my hand. And me? I didn't flinch. One of the photographers stepped closer, angling for a shot, probably thinking this was some kind of heartfelt moment, a dramatic gift exchange, the kind that trends with hashtags and viral music overlays. I took a breath. "This ring," I said, "is not going anywhere." There was no yelling, no mic drop, just quiet defiance. "This ring," I repeated, "is mine." I didn't lift my voice. I didn't need to. Phones were still rolling. I could see the live stream banners at the bottom of some of the screens held up. The wedding had been tagged, shared, boosted in real time. Hashtag Winslow wedding, hashtag heirloom drama, hashtag heirloom drama, hashtag ringgate. Someone out there was screen recording. Others were commenting. I could almost hear it through the silence. "She's right. That mother is out of line. Good for her. Where's the bride's actual gift?" But in the room? No one moved. Rachel turned to the crowd, voice clear. This wasn't her fault. None of this was her idea. Her words silenced the remaining whispers. "I don't want anything that's not given freely," she added, her voice trembling but certain. I let go of her hand, placed the box gently in my clutch, and folded it shut with a soft snap that somehow echoed louder than the music ever had. And just like that, the spell broke. The pressure lifted. People exhaled. Some awkwardly returned to their seats. Others turned away, pretending to be engrossed in champagne or shrimp skewers. But I stayed where I was. Solid. Unmoved. Because sometimes the most powerful thing a woman can do is nothing, not run, not explain, not justify, just stand her ground. And I had never stood taller. It was Rachel who spoke first, her voice shaking just enough to make everyone lean in again. "I think maybe we should all take a breath." But before she could finish, a new voice cut through the space. Cool, clear, calm. "I don't think a breath will change what just happened. But truth might." Heads turned. And there she was, Marla Kane, my oldest friend, my emergency contact, my personal attorney. She strode forward in a fitted emerald green suit like she was born on court steps, not ballroom tile. The crowd parted instinctively, like they knew not to get in her way. She stopped beside me, one hand resting on the flap of her clutch. The other held a neatly folded manila envelope. "This isn't dramatic," she said to the crowd. "It's legal." She turned to my mother, voice razor sharp. "You presented a piece of personal property as a family heirloom. You announced its transfer publicly, without consent, in front of over 200 people. That's not generosity, that's coercion." My mother sputtered. "Excuse me?" Marla raised an eyebrow, slow and deliberate. "Do you deny attempting to transfer a ring that isn't yours to give?" "There was no—" "I have documents," she interrupted, flipping open the envelope and pulling out 3 crisp pages. Purchase receipt, independent appraisal, insurance listing. All with her name on them. All signed. All dated. If this had gone 1 inch further, if she'd felt pressured to hand it over, you would have opened yourselves to legal liability. Someone near the back murmured, "Holy." Aunt Sharon clutched her pearls. Marla turned to the phone still held in shaky hands. "And let's not pretend this didn't go live. These people aren't just witnesses. They're evidence." The room shifted again. My mother's face turned from red to white in a heartbeat. "This wasn't your ring to gift," Marla said, her voice calm but unrelenting. "And it wasn't your moment to manufacture." Rachel was now visibly trembling. My father had backed toward the exit. Marla stepped beside me again, her voice low now. "Just for me. You don't have to speak anymore if you don't want to. You've said enough." For the first time that night, I felt my shoulders loosen. The air tasted different. Real. Safe. Rachel reached for my hand again, but this time she didn't try to take anything, she just held it. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't know." "I believe you," I said. Marla turned back toward the crowd and tucked the documents back into her bag. "Unless anyone else has something to say about her private property, I'd suggest we all remember why we're here. Celebration, not spectacle." Silence answered, and slowly, hesitantly, the music returned. Glasses clinked again, people shifted in their seats. But this time, they didn't look at me like I was a disruption. They looked at me like I was something else entirely, like I was someone who finally said no, and meant it. The mood had changed. Not fully, not all at once, but enough. Enough to notice the way people moved now. Slower, more cautious, like they didn't know where to stand, or who to believe, or how to pretend everything was still lovely. And I just stood there, silent and still, watching the wreckage settle. Marla gave my hand one last squeeze before drifting off into the crowd, probably to grab a drink or corner an uncle with too many opinions. She never needed a spotlight. Just a moment, and a reason. Rachel was still next. Her makeup had smudged slightly under her eyes, but she looked more like herself than she had all day. No performance, no posing, just a girl in a white dress suddenly realizing her wedding wasn't a fairy tale. It was a war zone. "Why would she do this?" Rachel whispered, eyes flicking toward my mother, who now stood rigid by the floral arch, surrounded by no one. I shrugged. Control. Legacy. A room full of people she wanted to impress. Rachel exhaled, the sound weary and disappointed. "I thought she cared about me." "She probably does," I said. "Just not more than she cares about her own story." A server passed by with champagne. I took a glass, Rachel didn't. Behind us, the band launched into something soft and inoffensive, just loud enough to fill the space where the drama had been. The guests were still whispering, but they were quieter now, cautious. I watched as Aunt Linda put a hand on my mother's shoulder. My mother brushed it off. "She's not done," I said quietly. Rachel followed my gaze. "No? She never admits defeat," I murmured. "She just rewrites the loss." Rachel hesitated, then said something I hadn't expected. "I don't think I want the ring anymore, even if it were yours to give." I met her eyes. She wasn't angry. She wasn't blaming me. She was just awake now to everything. "That ring carries too many lies," she said. "Too many expectations. I don't want to start my marriage wearing something that was almost stolen from someone I love." My throat tightened. Before I could respond, someone raised their glass from across the room. A cousin, maybe. Then another. And another. "To boundaries," someone said, half joking, but more serious than they meant. "To owning your damn story," someone else chimed in. Laughter followed. Not cruel this time. Warm. Knowing. I didn't toast back. I just smiled. Small. Tired. Free. My mother stayed in the corner, back ramrod straight, smile frozen, jaw clenched so tightly I thought it might crack. And in that moment, I knew it wasn't just a ring I'd reclaimed. It was the narrative. She'd spent a lifetime building this version of me, quiet, grateful, background filler, but I had burned that version down, in front of everyone. and they watched me walk through the flames untouched. It didn't take long for the tide to turn. People who'd spent years nodding politely at my mother's every word now eyed her like she was radioactive. Conversations paused when she walked by. Smiles tightened, glasses lowered. And she knew it. She stood alone near the edge of the room, posture perfect, hands clasped, but her eyes kept scanning, searching for someone to latch onto, someone to salvage the story. But none of her usual sympathizers would meet her gaze. Not even the distant cousins from Connecticut who used to worship her garden parties. Because now? They'd seen too much. Rachel walked with me to the side of the hall, quiet but steady. Her bouquet hung limp in one hand, petals browning at the edges. She used me, she said. Used you, used the wedding. I nodded. She does that. God, she muttered, squeezing the stems tighter. All this time I thought she was just controlling. But this was something else. I didn't answer. She already knew. My father approached, slow, cautious. He looked older now, like the illusion of order had been holding him together all this time. I didn't know she was going to do that, he said, eyes on the floor. She didn't tell me. She joked about it at the rehearsal, I said. You heard her. You didn't stop it. He winced. I didn't think she'd actually go through with it. You didn't think, I repeated softly. That sounds about right. He looked like he wanted to say more, maybe even apologize, but Rachel stepped in. Mr. Ellison, she said, her voice firm but kind. I think it's best if you give her space right now. He nodded once, then walked away, shoulders folding in like he was trying to shrink into himself. Guests had returned to their seats now, picking at cake, making tentative jokes. A few brave couples began dancing, but the music felt different. No longer celebration, more like cleanup. I watched my mother hover near the DJ, trying to command something. Attention, dignity, relevance, but he turned away mid-sentence. She was used to controlling rooms. But not this one, not anymore. Rachel turned to me, her voice quieter now. You should know, I'm not going to forget this. I looked at her, unsure if she meant the scandal, the ring, or the rescue. She smiled gently. I mean that in the good way. You stood there while everyone tried to strip something from you, and you didn't move. I couldn't, I said. If I had, I would have disappeared. Rachel nodded. Well, you didn't. And for the first time in a long time, I believed it. The people who mattered had seen me. And more importantly, the ones who didn't, they couldn't unsee me now. The night unraveled slowly. The music softened. The lights dimmed. Guests began to slip away in pairs and small groups, like debris drifting from a collapsed structure. I stayed. Not because I needed to, but because I didn't run anymore. When I finally stepped toward the exit, she was waiting. Of course she was. Vivian Ellison didn't lose quietly. She stood by the door like a statue cast in resentment. Still beautiful, still composed, still incapable of apology. You embarrassed this family, she said, not even pretending to whisper. I stopped in front of her, folding my clutch in both hands. No, I exposed it. She flinched, just slightly. There were better ways to handle this. You could have spoken to me in private. I tried. You just didn't listen. Her mouth twisted. You think you looked strong up there? You looked bitter. Alone. I met her eyes. I am alone. And I'm okay with that. She stared, stunned by the calm. I didn't want to give that ring away because it wasn't yours to offer, I said. You don't get to hand off pieces of me to make yourself look generous. You're twisting everything, she snapped. We were trying to include you. No, I said. You were trying to use me. Again. She opened her mouth, but I stepped closer. And for the record, I added, I don't need your version of inclusion anymore. I don't need a seat at your table. I built my own. She blinked fast. Behind her, my father lingered in the shadows, silent as always. I'm not angry, I said, softer now. I just see you clearly. Finally. Vivian scoffed. You think the world is going to applaud you for this little rebellion? I shrugged. It already did. She didn't answer. Couldn't. I leaned in, close enough for only her to hear. This was the last time you try to write my story. Then I stepped back and walked away. No tears, no second glance, because I wasn't asking for her approval anymore. I wasn't offering forgiveness either. I was offering something better. An ending. By morning, it was everywhere. Hashtag ringgate, hashtag she sighed no, hashtag not your heirloom. Marla texted me at 6:13 a.m. with a link to a video already at 1.2 million views. Congratulations, she wrote. You're officially the internet's favorite boundary. The thumbnail was my face, mid-sentence, with the caption, "Daughter refuses to be used as prop in friend's wedding gift scam." I didn't know whether to laugh or vomit. I made coffee instead. Rachel called just after 9. She was quiet but kind. "People keep tagging me," she said. "Some of them think I planned it." "I know you didn't." "I posted something," she added. "Just now, told them the truth. That you didn't owe me anything. That your mother lied to both of us." I swallowed. "You didn't have to." "I did," she said. "This was never supposed to happen. And it's not your burden to carry." I thanked her. We didn't say much after that. What else was there to say? I scrolled through the comments later, against my better judgment. A few trolls, of course, but most were shockingly kind. She stood her ground. She protected her peace. Imagine being ambushed with your own jewelry. Why do moms do this? My personal favorite: "This is why I keep my engagement ring in a sock drawer. Trust." No. 1. Marla dropped by that afternoon with bagels and a grin. "You know this means your mother's going to lose her mind over this," she said, kicking off her shoes. "She already did," I muttered. "No, I mean now that strangers are siding with you. That's the real betrayal. The public shame. The narrative slipping out of her hands." I nodded, still watching the clip loop silently on my phone screen. My voice. My words. The moment I said, "That ring is mine," now etched across the internet like a badge. I hadn't meant to go viral. I'd meant to survive. Marla leaned back on my couch and said, "You know, most people would have caved," smiled for the cameras, handed it over just to keep the peace. "I used to be that person." "You're not anymore." That part hit me harder than I expected, not because it was praise, but because it was true. I hadn't just kept the ring. I'd kept myself. And no one, not my mother, not the crowd, not even the well-meaning bride, had been able to take that away from me. Outside, the sun dipped low behind the buildings, casting my living room in a soft amber haze. The world could keep watching. I wasn't hiding anymore. Marla was still sipping tea when I finally opened the drawer. The drawer. The one where I kept the ring, the insurance papers, the receipt and its original envelope. Everything I'd held on to for years like a backup plan I never fully admitted to needing. She glanced up, brows raised. "You thinking about selling it?" "No," I said. I took out the box, turned it in my hands. It looked smaller now, not diminished, just right-sized. Marla leaned forward. "So what's the plan?" "I'm keeping it," I said, simple as breathing. "Not because I'm waiting for anyone, not because I need to prove a point." I looked down at the velvet box. "Because I chose it, and it reminds me of the moment I started choosing myself." She smiled. "Sounds like a damn good reason to keep a rock." We both laughed, that soft kind of laughter that only happens when you've already weathered the storm and now you're sitting on dry land, sun-warmed and worn out, but alive. Outside, notifications were still pinging. News outlets were requesting interviews. DMs were flooded with people telling me I was brave, bold, inspiring. But none of that held a candle to the quiet in my chest. That was what I'd been missing all these years. Not applause. Peace. Marla got up to leave a little later. She hugged me at the door. "You did good," she said. "You drew the line, you kept the ring, you told the truth." I held the door open for her. "You're the one who called it coercion on a microphone." She grinned. "Well, someone had to say it." After she left, I sat alone with the ring beside me, the evening soft and still. I didn't wear it. Not yet. Not because I wasn't ready, but because, for once, I didn't need it to feel whole. I had already made the most important commitment of my life, to myself, and I wasn't letting go. The apartment was still. Not quiet like a pause before something begins. Quiet like a chapter had ended. I padded barefoot across the floor, moonlight slanting through the blinds, casting soft stripes across the sheets. My phone was off. Notifications silenced. The world could keep spinning without me tonight. On the nightstand, the ring sat in its box, unworn, undisturbed. It didn't sparkle like it had under the reception hall chandeliers. It wasn't framed by gasps or whispers or applause. It was just there. And for the first time, that was enough. I'd spent so long thinking I had to explain it. Why I bought it. Why I kept it. Why it mattered. But I didn't owe anyone that. Not anymore. It was never about the ring. It was about what I'd claimed when I chose it. What I'd defended when they tried to take it. What I stood for when I stood up. Alone, with the weight of 200 eyes pressing down, and still didn't bend. I sat on the edge of the bed and opened the box. The diamond caught the faintest thread of light, just a whisper of a glimmer. Not shouting, not pleading, just existing, like me. I closed the lid gently and placed it back where it belonged. Not as a symbol of waiting or hoping or needing, but as proof that I had been tested. And I had not been erased. There would be more weddings, more expectations, more mothers who tried to shape daughters into ornaments they could parade. But I wouldn't be one of them. I'd already chosen myself. The ring didn't have to shout anymore, because I finally knew who I was, and that would always be louder.